Welcome. We are here with Lisa Skye, who is co-founder and former CEO of Primary, a gorgeous co-working space based in Manhattan. And she is also the recent founder of Skye Advisory. So we are looking forward to learning more about Lisa's journey in co-working and also more about what she is up to now. So Lisa, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Jamie and Gio, great to be here.
So Gio's in Little Rock. We always have to say where in the world is Gio on our calls. He's always somewhere else.
Your little
and I'm in a
mapping.
I'm in a Bonvoy hotel. Someone take a shot.
Drink. We do shots when the term Bonvoy comes up. It's Gio's favorite phrase to talk about the industry and many things. And then Lisa, that's a background, not your real background.
That is one of the communal spaces in Primary in Manhattan, but I am actually in Miami Beach and based here for the last year and loving it. And I'm originally a Floridian from West Palm Beach, about an hour north of here. So I say now that after 20 years though in New York City and coming back to Florida, being originally a Floridian, given all the New Yorkers are here now, I feel right at home.
Totally. That backdrop is gorgeous. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. We don't have to go way beginning. I know you have some very interesting beginning roots. Although now that I'm thinking about it, what does corn have to do with Florida?
Oh gosh, it doesn't. It's just yellow and happy, and I love it. And I have a cookbook called "I Love Corn" that I created for charity.
Gio,
It's 50 donated recipes by famous and award-winning chefs like Daniel Boulud and Martha Stewart, Dan Barber, etc. And it was actually the reason I left WeWork after 14 months, after being their second employee and working with them to open the first 2 locations. I had my book picked up by an international publisher and I was going to need to spend time working on the manuscript, which was true. Really, the reason I left WeWork was because there was an 18-month non-compete in the employment agreement that they gave out after the first year that I just really struggled with coming to terms with them on. And so the timing just seemed right for me to leave and focus on the manuscript, which is what I did for 6 months after I left and then got back into real estate.
Okay, so how did you go from Florida to New York? What was the
one-way ticket when I was 21? I'm born and raised, and I had always wanted to go to NYU and bright lights, big city. My parents grew up in Chicago, and I just literally bought a one-way ticket and left 3 weeks later. I was ready to go, and I had the incredibly good fortune of having already had a couple years of hospitality, restaurant experience in Palm Beach. I had a pretty decent resume already created for myself, and I landed my first job at Union Square Cafe, working with Danny Meyer, who is an icon in the hospitality industry. And I worked with them for 3 years and had the great fortune of being an opening manager at 11 Madison Park, which is a restaurant that's had now global recognition as well. And so my pedigree, though I've been working in different sides of real estate the last 15 years and co-working for maybe not 8-9 years cumulatively, hospitality feels like a big part of the fabric of sort of my experience and background.
You had Danny on your, I was trying to remember, you were doing this Instagram series, live story series during the pandemic. Didn't you have Danny on that?
Yeah, which was incredible because of course he's really hard to pin down. And, he was saying that it was the first time in, I think 25 or 30 years that he had been home for 7 weeks, consistently, which was the point at which I interviewed him, and he was having meals with his family and, his 3 kids, four kids, I think. And so, yeah, but he's just has the Midas touch. He has such, just an authenticity and a warmth to him. And no matter what level of success he's achieved, he's the type of guy who you walk past him in Union Square and, oh, Lisa, how are you? 20 years up, later. And I just love that. It's aligned and consistent with the brand that he's created with, Union Square Hospitality Group.
Okay, so then
and I love
Gio, jump in.
I was going to say I love the fact that you mentioned that, and I know I'm being kind of quiet here because the beginnings, and I'm kind of on the end here. But I mean, I love, and we'll get into this about how you just mentioned how he got to spend time with his family and more quality of life, right? And that's something that you've really focused on the last year. So I want to make sure that we jump into that, because that's been super important for what I've been following, right? And what you're trying to really help people find.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think, again, right, we're kind of jumping in the middle of a conversation here about how the way people work and the flexible office space industry, commercial real estate industry is being impacted, here in the aftermath of the pandemic, right? Because people are able to work remotely, and top talent is able to command or dictate the place from which they will work, and they will maintain employment with the company if they can work from this location. And so it's an interesting time. And I'm still, though, after 6 years as CEO of Primary, I resigned January 1st, and I'm one of the 5 board members for our business now. I'm still calling into the weekly sales meetings, and my finger is very much on the pulse of what's happening in Manhattan. And certainly I'm friendly with a lot of operators there. And I used to say, being in the the residential side of the real estate industry, that Manhattan or New York City, because of the density and because it's a global destination, was always the last to get hit and the first to recover. But ironically, with a pandemic, right, because of the density, we were the first to get hit, and dare I say, like, the last to recover. Or the recovery landscape has been very different here, where even just Manhattan, where you have so much central transportation coming into the middle of Manhattan, Midtown, the occupancies are back up to 80-90%. But downtown, the financial district, which is where Primary is, I say it's why I can sleep at night, because I'm friendly with all the other operators that are around there. We're all 60-ish% occupancy, after really having our occupancies devastated throughout the pandemic. So we're month over month moving in the right direction for over a year and a half now, but it has been a slower recovery in New York City, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's go back pre-pandemic, since everybody heard you say second employee at WeWork and wants to know that story. So tell us what that was. How did you end up at WeWork? And
I know,
what was that like?
It's a super fun story. I love it. And this is, to me, part of, it's a massive part of who I am and my why in life. I joke, on a personal note, as it comes to dating, I say, I don't know why I'm going to meet this person I'm going on a date with. I might introduce them to their next chiropractor, or they might be my next client, or, who knows why I'm going to meet this person. I'm always just kind of keeping my mind open to who knows why I'm supposed to meet people. But I've always been insatiably curious about who people are and what they do and what they did before, what they're doing now, and how can I help them, to in whatever it is that they're up to. And so I was in New York City for 22 years, hospitality industry first, in restaurants, then television very briefly, anchored a TV show for PBS, which was hilarious. Got paid $35,000 a year, could barely pay my bills, but I was on TV, I said to my mom. Then jumped to real estate. And I was in the mortgage business for a couple of years first, but then the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, and then I was just done with mortgages. And I went into this networking group. I was a leader in BNI, Business Network International, for about 10, 12 years. I led a very large chapter in Manhattan. And I showed up one morning and I said, I'm opening the mortgage seat, which was the business seat that I represented. And I said, but I'm the president of the chapter, so I'm not going to leave the chapter. I'm going to lean into everyone for opportunities. Here's the things that I'm good at, that I'd like to do. And that morning, the financial advisor brought a guest who brought Adam Newman. So a guest of a guest was Adam Newman.
Brought Adam 20 minutes to a BNI meeting.
To a 7 a.m. BNI meeting. He came late. I think he came late, like 20, but not too late, by the way, maybe only, 15, 20 minutes late or so. But 20 minutes after the meeting ended, we ended up kind of, next to each other talking. And I said, oh, thanks for coming. He said, oh, I might need a mortgage. I said, I don't know if you heard me. I'm opening the mortgage seat. He said, well, what are you going to do next? And I said, I don't know. I want to do something that lights me up. And he said, well, I love creating community, blah, 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 the things I said. He said, well, I'm starting this thing called WeWork. I have this building down in Soho. You should come and check it out. That was on Wednesday morning. I went that afternoon, met with him for an hour. I went 2 days later on Friday. I met with he and Miguel for 3 hours. And at 7 o'clock on that Friday night, He walked me down onto Lafayette and said, we can pay you $70,000. We're going to pay you cash under the table. And he said, and I want you to start on Monday because we're going to open the first 17 offices and I want to be full with a wait list. And I said, whoa, I said, okay, let me think about it. I haven't even told my partner in the mortgage business that I'm leaving. I'll talk to him this weekend and I'll be in touch, over the weekend. And so called my partner. He said, you've been wanting to make a change forever. You should go for it. And so Monday, 5 days after I met him, I started as the first employee or second employee. It was Adam and Miguel's brother, Kyle, who was the first employee. And then, me. And it was dust in the building. And, I followed Adam around for probably 4 tours and listened to him give, just like the We Crash Apple, series. Jared Leto did an incredible job. I thought I really, as someone who spent a lot of time with Adam, I felt like I could close my eyes in certain moments and felt like I was there, like with him. It was pretty remarkable. And we were off to the races. And I booked all 170 offices, in that first building, and with an assistant. And I joke I was IT, janitor, billing, sales, booking, whatever. I did everything. I wore all the hats, and then went on to open the second building. And I with an intern on a Sunday, I installed all the film at the lower level on the glass.
You did not.
Fourth, yeah, all day long on a 4th floor, all the film. Oh yeah, with a with an intern.
Because
I put.
We all know what it costs to get like Signarama or whatever to come in and install that.
Yeah,
hilarious.
Wild.
I never knew that about you. I only really know you of primary. I didn't. That's a great story. I've never heard that before. Wow.
Yeah, well, for me, what I love about the flexible office space industry is, so as I said, I was leading a BNI chapter, and why that's significant is because I've always been, like, since I was a little kid, I just have had friends at all different schools, and I love having, parties and gatherings and things like that. And so, when I was in the mortgage business, it was like, how do I build my business? I know a lot of people, and my financial advisor buddy knew a bunch of people. We're like, how would we get our people together, and how often would it be, and what would the agenda be, and how would there be accountability? I don't know. Let's talk next month. And then I got invited to the startup of a chapter, and I was like, oh my God, there's an agenda and a structure and accountability and protocol. I was like, this is great. How do I start my own? And so I went and I did that. And I was president of, 4 different chapters, founded and led what became the largest chapter in the United States, 4th largest in the world.
I was going to say, it must have been one of the largest.
It was 72 members on the day that I left. So I was weekly leading, I would say, come in with my signature, good morning, is what I would say, and people be like, who is this crazy woman leading this meeting? And then they would come to find that was just the level of commitment that I had to showing up and generating at the front of the room and making it exciting at 7 a.m. And it was great. Who's at a business networking meeting at 7 a.m., by the way, guys? People who are serious about growing their business.
Totally.
And so the point is that what I loved about WeWork and the co-working industry is that it was the physical iteration of what I'd already been doing in BNI for years. I could literally meet someone on a tour and I'd say, what do you do? Oh, I'm an interior designer. Oh, great. Who are the types of professionals that you like to meet? Oh, architects or, a real estate broker. Oh, that's funny. Knock, knock, knock. This is an architect. Oh, Bob, you should meet Sally. And I would create this instant synergy, right, during the tour. And they'd say, oh, wow, someone who really listens, cares about me. How do I sign up? And voila, instant community was off to the races.
Right. So did you get interviewed for the We Crashed series?
Yeah. I got interviewed twice actually for the We Crashed podcast series because after there was more I guess press that came out about Rebecca and sort of, that narrative around her, they wanted to ask me more questions about her and my interactions with her, and so that they could continue to make the podcast more relevant, so they could make edits. Yeah, but then in the We Crash, the Apple TV series, there's one of the initial employees is named Leslie, and I guess it's based on, it's a little different than my story, my timeline, but I'm guessing that's who it's based on. Me.
That is so interesting. So did you get to go to any of the camps, or was that after you
It was after
left?
it was after me. I just heard all the stories though. I don't know, maybe it's good I didn't go. Seems like crazy
Yeah.
times. Wild.
It was so incredible to sit back and just watch that and actually talk to people who actually were involved in a lot of those things. So to me, it's always so intriguing to hear from people that were employed there or did interact with Adam. But you're not the first to say that Jared Leto did an incredible job.
Yeah, this is like, I've been interviewed a lot, for magazines and for the books and podcasts and the shows, Hulu, HBO, American Greed episode came out, I think in January, and I will say this, that again, I was there just the first 14 months and it was incredibly inspiring to be there and to be around, I think, Adam. And it informed the trajectory of my entire career. I was inspired to the extent that, my whole life I had wanted to open my own business. And I just thought restaurants are a whole lifestyle change, nights, weekends, holidays. But when I was with WeWork, I said, oh my God, I would love to open a business like this, and I did. And it was a tremendous learning experience the last 7 years. And the good news is that even with everything I was up against the last bunch of years or overcame, however you want to phrase it, I still love the industry. And so that's a good sign. But back to Adam, you cannot deny that, as someone texted me a couple of days ago, with this recent announcement of the $350 million investment in Flow, my friend said he must be the most charismatic person on the planet. and it's true that, he was natural at being able to say, and imagine this and imagine that. And, everything we did, it was, very, very good. And next time, let's do it a little faster, a little better, a little more. And so there was a way in which there was like always a push or a drive behind people to do more, be better, etc., which was intense also.
So he inspired you and inspired Primary in some way. Talk about kind of the vision of what you created.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so after I left, I worked on my I Love Corn cookbook. And then I joined a team at Corcoran that straddled the sort of residential and commercial real estate sales side. And I really kind of just pondered, how would I be different? And so Primary, the name comes from the idea or philosophy that if you make your primary focus yourself, your body, your well-being, everything in your life can thrive. And so the differentiator is that beyond having beautiful professional workspace, I really love Industrious, what they've created, because it feels very refined, elevated, sophisticated product. And ours has on-site studio where we host yoga, meditation, boot camp classes, on-site healthy food and juice cafe, lots of live greenery, as you can see behind me, preserved moss walls, photographic scenic imagery. Statistics will tell you, and as someone who now just completed a positive psychology course, that I did for about 9 months, the science says when you look at something green, when you put a plant on your desk in your home office or wherever you go to work, it will increase your productivity. It will lower your heart rate and blood pressure. It will make you feel happier. And so I wanted to create a place where our philosophy is you work best when you feel great, and the space is a space where people can work their best because they feel great. So that's it. But we opened the first, space was 25,000 square feet. We added another 50,000 square feet on with a third floor there. So we have 75,000 square feet there still open. We did open a Midtown location also, which we gave back to the landlord beginning of last year, 2021, as a result of the pandemic. So, we're the brand that I envision is still alive. We had to give back a location. I still look at it as an overall, best case scenario given the circumstances. And, I think I'm disappointed that we saw some female-led operators kind of out of the spotlight, and we've seen continued growth with, male-run operators. And as a woman in the industry, I certainly will continue to want to be an advocate for women and minorities who are in the industry and have visions and dreams to create similar concepts. So
I'm curious, tough timing, but I am super passionate about your concept. And I've been to the original location. It's stunning and natural light and air pure, it's very holistically, to your point, like about well-being.
Mhm.
How will the brand live on? So the location's open, you're on the board.
Mhm.
Who operates it? How does
Yeah.
it now?
It's a 5-person board. I'm one of the 5 people, and it's a board run business right now. So there's no CEO. We have um literally a part-time who she was the general manager of our Midtown location. We have a part-time operations director, and we have a full-time community sales manager who's been with us 3 years, pre-pandemic, who's awesome. We have a facilities manager, and then we have 2 other staff that are, front desk and immersed in the community there. But so we have a really, really solid team on the ground of, hospitality based professionals. And yeah, like I said, month over month, we're moving in the right direction. And I think we're continuing to look to just get our occupancy back up to where we were pre-pandemic. And then we will absolutely consider expansion, or, whatever the possibilities are to continue to grow the brand in the future. So for right now, we're focused on executing at a high level, single large location in Manhattan.
So have you seen a shift in who's using the space, right? Who your members are overall?
I'm so happy to say that we had a good amount of loyalty. We have continued to have companies that have really continued to grow with us. We have a few companies that literally, like the founder was the first person, and now one company, or an urban planning firm, they have over 20 employees. Another company is in the crypto space on the compliance side. Former Goldman Sachs team came over, 1, 2 of them, and now they have, I don't even know, they've raised over $30 million or so, and have over 30 employees in Tel Aviv. And so we have a few of those sort of core companies that have grown with us, but solopreneurs, small teams, I think it's just an interesting time because not everyone wants to go back to the office. People want to be in the office 1, 2 days a week. So, and so a lot of times you see the boss in the office and the employees are doing what they want.
Yeah, one of the big reasons I ask is because we've seen so much growth in the flex sector out in the suburbs of New York City, right? The New Jersey, Staten Island, Long Island, and people are going, hey, you know what? I don't want to go office back on the island. I would rather office near a train station or bus station or just roadway so I can get in when I want to a couple days a week or every other week or whatever. So that's really what my question was based around and what I've been hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. I have, so I've just launched, I'm still on the board for Primary, but I've just officially, literally in the last month, launched an advisory company called Skye Advisory, and working with all sorts of different entrepreneurs in healthcare, travel, cannabis, hospitality, real estate, wellness, et cetera, to take early stage companies to fuel their visions, basically through strategic introductions, fundraising, advisement, et cetera. And the comment, oh yeah, so one of the companies that just reached out to me is a commercial real estate company that's in New Jersey, and they have a space in sort of a suburban, area that they want to create 12,000 square feet of co-working. And I don't think it's a bad idea, right? Because I think, and especially if you're starting to develop partnerships, right, where I feel like, is it like the Lexi, created by Liz Elam, Juicy, and I think that obviously the big guys, that have more suburban reach and they can take these sort of smaller footprints are going to do well. I guess like the point they're making here is, prior to the pandemic, I had a vision to have 1 million square feet in New York City. And I thought, and once I started to learn the financials and the overall model of the industry, I thought, yeah, why on earth would I not take 100,000 square feet in a space? My communal space, right, is a relatively consistent percentage of the business, and then I'll make my margins go up, and the exponential revenue potential goes up if I take more space and build out more offices. And now it's just not what we see, right? I think to myself, okay, 25,000 square feet, right? And then a smaller footprint in Miami or Atlanta or LA or in the other markets where people are going to want to live, or like you're saying in Manhattan, but then Brooklyn and Long Island and New Jersey and Hoboken and Westchester, so that people don't have to commute, right? That's what everyone has woken up to is, oh my God, I just spent the last 15, 20 years of my life, commuting X hours a month, and I don't want to do that anymore. I've really loved the time with my family. I feel better. I'm happier. I've lost some weight. And I'm more productive, right? As a result, right? You work best when you feel great. It comes back to the philosophy of my business, right? It's wild.
Yeah, and I think that's where the work-life balance is so big, right? I mean, I tell people, as someone that's traveled all over the world, the U.S. has never seen a work-life balance like we've seen the last year, for sure, as people have kind of adjusted to COVID and the pandemic and just fallen into a routine of not having to rush, go to try to drive or commute, whatever that looks like, for long commutes.
Yeah.
You're talking about everybody but you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We won't get into that.
Yeah. I mean, Lisa, the primary philosophy is still really unique. Why do you think that is the case? The workspace that serves the whole human, what you created. I wonder why does that not really exist outside of what you?
Such a good question. Such a good question. I've never been asked that question. I mean, I'm tapping into like positive psychology education, or just thinking, as humans, we're so set in our ways, right? We're so programmed to be a certain way that it really takes something to shift. They say it takes, right, like 17 days to change a habit or create a habit, right? And so that's what comes up for me when you ask that question. Like, when I think Liz Elam interviewed me also maybe a year or two ago, and we were talking about future predicted trends and I hate to think of it as a trend. I remember actually one of the investors I pitched to said, "Oh, I love the concept. You're so on trend with the wellness concept." And, I kind of looked at my partners and I was like, I hope I'm not on trend. I hope the world is waking up to the
Right.
fact that when you take care of yourself,
Yeah.
you work better and your life and body is better, period. And so I hate to think of hospitality as a trend, but, that's what Liz and I were saying, is that hospitality, that meeting and exceeding customer expectations, the mental health component of it, really ensuring that people feel great so they can work their best. Why do I think it hasn't taken, is because I think people are very sort of set in their ways. And there's this still like a very pregnant pause right now where people are saying, how do I want to work? And, oh, wait, I don't have to go back to the way I was doing it before. What does that mean for me? What becomes possible for me? And how can I make decisions from that place? I think people are in a very contemplative place right now, because of how much uncertainty we had for so long. I mean, no one expected. I looked at my May 2020 email saying, I would think we'll be back in the office in September. Meanwhile, that was September a year later. Nuts. I mean, who would have thought, right? Who would have thunk?
Yeah, I think your psychology courses are like really timely, because I like you're making me think. A lot of us have been talking about this like weird human behavior shift of like, right, we thought everyone would want to get back to something, and yet there's this like inertia of being at home, and to your point, trying to figure out like, what do I want, and what does that look like, but not maybe taking action quite yet, which every space operator in the world is kind of waiting for that to really flip. I mean, there are markets where it's really coming back, but markets where still not. And the potential demand for people like a primary, the primary is hands down a far better environment than probably anybody's home office, right? Like there's just
Yeah.
no question. And
Yeah.
most people are not creating any sort of primary like environment at home. And so what you're offering, I think, is really important, because it's better. And that's what it's going to take, I think, to get people out. Now it's only right in downtown. You know what I mean? Like the concept and the brand promise, I think, is really, not to say on trend, but I think it's important and really befitting how people are starting to think. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's just an interesting time. We're still in a hybrid. We might stay in a hybrid, where I too, as someone who loves community, I mean, I think I was interviewed in the beginning of the pandemic. I think I was out at Benjamin Diet's place out on Shelter Island being interviewed by the editor-in-chief of Biz Now. And I think I literally said something along the lines of, I could go like this to you and say, oh, Jamie, it's so great to see you, and a virtual hug, and like, let's hug ourselves, because the body, by the way, doesn't know the difference when you hug yourself versus if it's someone else, in case you guys don't know that. The apparent science, I don't know, but I want hugs. Like, I want to be around your body heat and energy if I feel the difference. And so I don't love being at home 5 days a week. I do also want somewhere to go to, probably 2 to 3 days a week also, and to have that option. I think that again, going back to human nature, putting the mandates out there, it's why we just saw with Apple that they've, mandated the return to the office, and there's this whole petition and rebellion against it, right? And I think people don't want to be told how they have to work and what's best for them and what hours a day. And what if I've struggled with that my whole life also, where I'm a night owl. My circadian rhythm, like, I'm not a 6 a.m. person. I could go to bed at 12 or 1 o'clock and wake up at 8 or 9 a.m. because I want my 8 hours. But I remember my dad, who owned his own urban planning company, for 6 years before he died 18 years ago, and the company still exists, which is awesome. And I think that, he would be up till 2, 3 in the morning, and he'd get to the office at 10 or 11 because he owned the company. But everyone else had to be there at like 9 a.m., and so I don't know. It's just everyone's contemplating what's best. I think I hear a small person knocking. Of course, I've said do not do it, but I'm gonna keep going. I can talk and parent at the same time.
Right, a pandemic skill, if ever there was one.
Totally, 100%. Oh my God, all the videos.
Lisa, have you read Malcolm Gladwell's book about
which one?
I think it's called When, the Science of, like, oh, you have to read it because you could be quoting him. He talks about how important like looking at nature is. And he talks about like night owls, I think in the context of, well, anyway, you'll have to read it. It has been a while since I read it, but how it's hard to be a night owl because the world is not organized. The world of work is not organized.
Exactly.
Night owls. Yeah,
exactly. And that's why I'm saying that, yeah, why would if you think about it, like, why would my company not want me to be most productive and work when it's best for me, right? I mean, that doesn't even make sense for the success of their business.
Totally.
It's the multitasking at its finest, people.
So, Gio, do you want to jump in with another question? I have another one, but I want to give you a chance to ask.
No, you're on a roll here. I'll pick up in a minute.
I'm just curious in terms of what you're doing today and working with entrepreneurs who notoriously have no balance. How are you, or maybe it's not possible, like integrating the philosophy of primary into the work that you're doing now?
Well, I only started a month ago, so ask me again in 3 to 6 months,
Totally.
and I will let you know.
So,
yeah, go ahead, Gio, go ahead.
So we're all chime in there is kind of what got you to this stage, right? And that's really the evolution that I've seen is the last 12 to 18 months for you, right? It's been an evolution of, you were running that rat race in New York and we're chasing all that. And then there's been a complete shift in what you're chasing, right? And I think back to Jamie's point is there's so many people right now trying to figure out what it is they want, right? I mean, obviously an office is necessary, but what does that office look like? Where is the office? What's important? And so I think, to Jamie's question, I think what leads up to what you're doing now is really the journey that you've been on.
Yeah. I mean, life is long. There are cycles. I have a lot of personal philosophies around this line of questioning that you're giving me. I mean, I wrote the irony. I'll be the first one to admit that, when you make your primary focus your body, yourself, your well-being, everything thrives. Well, not everything has thrived in my life. I just lost about 20 pounds over the last, year. I think I was probably holding on to weight almost as like a protection, even, or a shield. I like to say I've become a lighter person physically, literally, mentally over the last year. My business was so difficult. I think I wasn't taking care of myself. Ironically, I wasn't living the philosophy of the business consistently. I mean, I'm a hardwired for positivity person because of my upbringing with my mother, but it was really challenging to raise money, to deal with a difficult investor who wasn't funding at the cadence that he was supposed to, to try to grow the business, to run out of money. To have two small children during the pandemic, or to have children who start off small and then get large, and then I finalized a divorce 3 months ago in May also, and so it's been a lot. And for me, the truth was that a year and a half ago, I said to my investors, the truth is I'm burnt out. That there, I can insert that as some words of wisdom here, is that I often say to anyone that I've been coaching or advising, fill in the blank. The truth is blank, and like whatever your truth is for yourself, no one can argue with that. It's and that's where you have to go towards whatever the truth is. And so for me, the truth is that I was burnt out and I just needed a break. And so that's what I got. And I saw the Chapter 11 bankruptcy through. We were in it for 17 months. That's what we had to do because our revenues went to 25% of what they were previously. And then I resigned as CEO January 1st, and I'm one of the 5 board members, and that's where we're at. And it gave me an opportunity, Gio. I'm, speaking of quoting books, I'm a big fan of a philosophy that Tim Ferriss presents in his book, 4-Hour Work Week. He presents this philosophy of a mini retirement. He says, work hard, really hard, and then retire for like 3 months or 6 months. And this is the third time. I just took 6 months off, and it's the third time I've done it in my life, where I did the same in 2008. I traveled for what I thought would be 3 months, became 5 months. 2013, at the end of the year, I went to my mom and thought I was going to be there a few months, ended up being there a year. And now I just did this again. And I know I will never regret, this time that I took off, because having lost my father, suddenly 18 years ago, I've always been very aware of the fact that life can be gone like this. And I always live from a space of, if I died tomorrow, what would I want to be doing for myself or in my life today? And for a long time, the answer was build my dream called Primary. And so I was sacrificing some of my well-being, and I see that now more clearly in retrospect. But there's a time and a place for all of it. I've kind of gone off on a philosophical tangent here a little bit, but I feel like it's all relevant. And these are the struggles, right, that entrepreneurs go through, whether we're operators in the industry or in any industry, as you said, Jamie.
And how much did those little minions behind you have to do with that?
What's that? What, the burnout or the focus?
No, the change in philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have had, I'm someone who likes to live with no regrets, and I am very much like Adam. I'm a visionary. I'm a big picture thinker also, and so I'm pretty good. I'm pretty dialed in at saying, how will I feel if I do this or don't do that? And so I have pangs as a mother, knowing that cumulatively I missed out on months of their life. They're 5 and 6 right now, and you know what? I also know. Here's another thing I took away from my positive psychology course is, the reminder that as humans, we experience polarities in so many areas of our life. And I remember I have some coaches who probably 10 years ago said to me, you know, you're the type of person who could be laying on a beach, relaxing, or you could be running and building an empire, you know, and I'm both. And so to embrace that about myself and to know that I love being a mom and spending that quality time with them, but I also love being someone who's creating a vision, being an inspiration for other entrepreneurs, women, you know, in the world. I'm both. So it's going to be constantly, that's my work-life balance. That's just my, you know, my life balance will always be there probably for me.
More of a seesaw than a balance. I think balance is, yeah. A tough
Seesaw. Totally.
Yeah.
Love that visual. That's what it is. Bingo.
Wait, I have to correct my book reference. It's Daniel Pink, not Malcolm Gladwell, and it's called The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing, but I think that you would like it.
Ooh,
So
I love that. Thank
put
you
it
for
on
the
the list.
recommendation.
I think Liz might have brought it to my attention a long
Oh,
time
I
ago.
love it.
And
Cool.
I've talking about psychology. I've recently brought the Enneagram test into Jamie's life.
I was like, when do we
And,
get to ask her what number? Though, Gio, I suspect you've figured that out by now.
No, I don't know her well enough. I'd be curious. I think there's, for some of us, there's shifts, right? Depending on where we are in our cycles. Lisa, what would you say you are on an Enneagram scale? You're on mute.
I don't know the Enneagrams very well. So I don't know which the EFJ, SM, whatever I am, you know, but I know that on the disc, I'm the one who, do you guys know disc, DISC, the personality?
Mm-hmm.
So I am literally like, I'm a 40% plus D and I, and I'm literally like a 2% C and like a, 5% S. So I'm domineer and influential and steady and compliant. No, that's not me.
If I were to guess, she's an 8, right? With the 8's a challenger, so they challenge everything.
Oh, it's the Enneagram is the number one. Oh, that's so funny. Someone was asking me if I'm an 8 or a 3, but also maybe 7 is a possibility there too. But I think I'm an 8. I think I did literally just look into this a couple months ago, and I think I am an 8.
Yeah,
Good
so
job,
I'd
Gio.
say you're probably an 8-7 wing. So an 8-7 wing is a challenger, but yet you're very social and can be the life of the party and everything else, which is what I lean to be. And then Jamie, what are you?
The 3. So yeah, I see the 3 tendencies, but 8s are sort of similar to a 3, but more what you just described. Yeah. I'm just learning, but that's my sense. My first thought was 8 also.
Yeah, you got it. I love it.
It's been a lot of fun, much like your psychology, just to see how we interact with other people. And, those are the conversations Jamie and I have had around, is if you know someone's personality traits, it's easier to interact with them, right? Because you don't take it personally. You realize that it's part of who they are.
Well, for that, I pull out my I like to say I'm Don Miguel Ruizing this, which, the 4 agreements, you guys know.
Yeah.
Don't take things personally, never make assumptions, always do your best and be impeccable with your word. I think, those are the 4, but so don't take things personally. I don't. But what I really, really value is straight communication. I'm as least passive aggressive as they come, and probably to a fault, to the extent that people, I'm too direct for a lot of people, I'm sure. But I just, be straight in your communication and take what you get, like I would much rather people be honest with me and vice versa, and feel like it's just a more empowering space that I can live from,
Yeah.
And we go off on a tangent.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think we've briefly touched on this, but certainly as we tie loose ends here, what are you trying to achieve with your new Skye advisory? Who are the types of people that should be reaching out to you, or you're trying to ultimately influence?
Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to share about it. I'm working with entrepreneurs who are in early stage, wanting to take their business to a next level. As I said, my background, of course, is in hospitality, food and beverage, real estate, of course, co-working, but could be healthcare, travel, wellness, et cetera. Really, entrepreneurs, the irony is that we all deal with the same stuff, right? Marketing and brand building, business planning, investor deck strategy, and strategic introductions, et cetera. And so I think my vision for myself, and again, ask me again in 3 to 6 months, though, is that I would be fueling, 5 to 6 different visions as an advisor, and potentially investor myself at some point here as well. And so that's what I've been starting to do, consults, and starting to do investor deck reviews, and starting to consider ways that I could potentially be brought on to different advisory boards for companies to be available to open my network, because I have an incredibly deep network after 20 years to help people get to that next level. Sometimes just having a conversation with someone who's in the industry or been in the business is incredibly valuable to entrepreneurs. And I have a lot of access. That's what I find, is that when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, is that within the first 10 minutes, I'm kind of, oh, I know 10 people you should meet or talk to, and I can make those introductions for them. So I like to be readily available for some entrepreneurs, and we'll see. I'm going to start creating some content, also courses based on the positive psychology courses I took, and we'll see where it goes.
That's awesome.
Okay, I'm going to skip my usual closing question, and instead I'm going to ask, I saw some great pictures posted of a fun get together of some power ladies recently. Give us the behind the scenes, like what was everybody kind of excited about? What was the movie and the theme for that?
I can't.
You can't.
Well, those
something you can divulge.
There's a couple things I can't share that were being spoken about.
What happens in Miami stays in Miami.
Oh, that dinner, yes, for sure. But I think for sure everyone was kind of talking about this $350 million that Adam just raised for Flow. Yeah, I think when we were talking a little bit about the spread outness, the decentralization of the flexible office space industry, the anti-hub, if you will, and now, so that we touched on already. But I think as it relates to Flow, I had run into some people down here who knew Adam, and it sounds to me like the last couple of years he's been buying these units, with partners. And so to me, I feel like it's a little deceiving to call it an investment for a startup, because it seems to me as though he's taking a personal portfolio and turning it into a business. So is that really a startup? Because it's already an established business. So that's one perspective, I had, and that I've kind of been, talking with folks about. But, in general, tall, white, male, getting a ton of money, rubs a few people the wrong way, I think. And again, I do go back to, look, I do know how incredibly inspiring Adam is, and what an incredible visionary he is. And I think that a lot of people's narrative around this, or opinion around Adam, is that as long as there's some controls, operational controls, financial controls in place, I mean, he is an incredible visionary. I will be the first one to always go back to that as it relates to that topic. That was one thing we were talking about.
Well,
and then the other things I can't share. They're in the vault.
Well, you were at the table with some incredibly visionary and talented women from the industry, so we look forward to some moves on their part as well, not just Adam. So
yeah, I'm going to see Kaylee tomorrow at Expansive over here in Miami. Yep, looking forward to it.
So okay, last question. What's your favorite thing to do on the weekend in Miami?
What's my favorite thing for what?
To do on the weekend in Miami?
Oh, I mean, I have a routine. I mean, I'll do this 7 days a week, though. If I don't have my boys, I will go right down into the ocean, 5 minutes, salt, then I go into my jacuzzi, 5 minutes, heat, relax my muscles, and then into the shower. And then that's how I start my day. So water for me, it's just, looking at the water, being in the water. I'm doing a lot of yoga and hot sweat. They say the cure for everything is salt, right? Sweat, tears, for the sea. And so I'm doing a lot of sweating and sea, and a few tears here and there. Very healthy also.
I love that. That's a hard routine to beat. thank you for taking the time to do this and kind of share your journey and what you're up to. And we look forward to checking back in a few months. You had a lot of, let's see. So we look forward to seeing how this shapes up for you and what your journey looks like.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Gio. Thanks, Jamie.
Absolutely.